Okay.
Okay. How do I share my screen again?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I showed you actually was the culmination of 2 years of hard work. And what I'm going to present to you this evening will really be the process of how we got there. So let me share my screen. Okay. Right? Can you see my slides now? Can you see
Yes.
my slides? All right. Thanks. There. So the project released the formulation of the master plan of the sustainable urban infrastructure development in metropolitan Cagayan de Oro. And let me share introduction really. The metropolitan development actually of Cagayan de Oro has been in the offing for the longest time because there have been talks already even in 1990. There have been studies and talks um, already discussing the metropolitanization, with Cagayan de Oro City as the center. So NEDA had already started conceptualizing it, and in 2009, they also prepared another expanded CIC area plan with Metro CDO as the Metropolitan Center. And of course, in 2019, finally there was funding for an actual metro study. And it was actually part of around 10 metropolitan studies in 2019. I think your class will be hearing more about it in the next few weeks. And Metro CDO is one of it. No? There. So in 2020, we finally finished it. No, it was difficult. It was a multidisciplinary team. We had engineers, environmental experts, economists, finance experts in the whole team, transport planners as well, and me as the land use planner and urban designer. Okay, so just to give you some context, these are the objectives of the project of the study is to formulate a comprehensive and inclusive master plan for the sustainable urban infrastructure development of Metro CDO. So it will be a guide for decision makers in the preparation of policies, plans, and programs, projects, activities, okay, and for implementation. And it's also to make use of public and private sector investments to achieve the development goals of the whole region. Right? And of course, you see here, very important is the ecosystem protection and conservation and climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. So I'll be showing you some maps later, right? And anybody here who's from Mindanao and is familiar with Metro CDO? Anybody? Anyway, so Metro CDO is actually two provinces. First is part of Region 10, all right? And it's actually comprised of two provinces, you have Bukidnon, as well as Misamis Oriental, all right? So you have 11 municipalities, two cities, and 6 impact areas. There were 6 municipalities which were also considered for future inclusion in the metropolitan region. And I don't know if you've taken this up in class, but what really defines a metro region, no? Some say it's when it's not just physical, it's really mainly economic, and it has to do with transportation. And in terms of the economy, a metropolitan region is based on how far are the workers who go to the urban core, where do they come from, no? And how far, which is the farthest town that has influence in the whole region. So this is really the basis of Metro CDO also, right? Okay, so I think much of my discussion will really be on the methodology and how we reached that video. The video was only 7 minutes, but actually that's really 24 months of really painstaking work. Okay. So I think in your planning class, perhaps you've already studied about crafting visions, no? So this is our approach really. So there are really two approaches in crafting a vision. Every time we do a master plan, even if it's just a site development plan, we always have a vision of the future. And for Metro CDO, it was the vision of the Metro region for 2040. Remember, the government has a program, Ambition 40. So that's really the timeline that they're looking at. And there are really two approaches. One in planning, one approach is to study the existing conditions and trends. You look at all the issues and then you project into the future. What is the future vision? But for Metro CDO, we did a different approach. We started with the future vision, all right? We looked at the future vision, and then we backcasted, or based on the vision, we looked at the present situation, and then we identified the gaps and what was needed to reach that vision to improve upon the present situation. All right. So it's very different from the typical planning project. Right. So here's a graphic that shows it. No. So the conventional approach shows you where you want to go, and then we look at where we are today, and then we determine where we want to go, and then we look at how to get there. No. But the backcasting approach, we look at the vision first, and then we look at our performance and how are we going to meet that vision, right? Okay, so I got this from our report today. So we did several workshops. No, we started with like I said, most projects will always start with a situational analysis and then the data gathering. For us, we started with that visioning workshop, and we had in the beginning we had several visioning workshops. The very first one was with all the mayors of those 13 towns, and then we asked them what was their vision for Metro CDO, right? And then after that, we had another one wherein the different stakeholders, no, the LGUs, the department heads in the LGUs, the different from representatives from the academe, private sector, from business. Based on that vision, they looked at what were the outcomes that they wanted. Right. So we also based this on the DILG also has guidelines on how it should be, you know, it should be achievable, hiring, understood, distinctive, complementary. Okay. So in our analysis, we also did the SWOT analysis. Are you all familiar with the SWOT? Okay. So we looked at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we also did a TOES analysis. When we do a TOES analysis, someone needs to mute their mic. Okay, right. So we also looked at the TOES analysis. No, the difference of the TOES analysis from the SWOT analysis is that we expand the SWOT, and we actually combine. We combine the strengths and opportunities, the weaknesses and opportunities, the strengths and threats, and weaknesses and threats to have to come up with solutions and strategies. No? Okay. And lastly, we also have the triple bottom line approach. The triple bottom line approach looks at the society. We look at the economy and the built and the environment. No? Sorry. Okay. To able to come up with a development vision based on what is so unique about Metro CDO. Okay. All right. And then based on that, we also did some gap analysis. We like the conventional visioning. We looked at where are we now, where do we want to go, and how do we get there. And of course, each consultant, we're different consultants, each of us had different thematic planning approaches. So for instance, for me, land use, we always look at the developable areas. We look at the constraints of development. No, what are the what is the terrain of Cagayan de Oro and which areas are non-buildable or very expensive to develop. Or we also look at the water supply. We look at the hazards. No, so those are the things. So the different consultants had their own. Right. So we looked at the different existing conditions and trends. Right. So we looked at the enabling environment. So this was we looked at the urban structure. Okay, we looked at the land uses and population. We also looked at the production systems. This is the economy as well as tourism, because tourism is this is specific in the terms of reference of NEDA. So we looked at tourism because Cagayan de Oro has a very rich culture, archaeology, as well as tourism. No? But they're not able to really capitalize on it. We also looked at the connectivity systems, and we looked at the road networks, even the water transport, air transport. We looked at even logistics, because Cagayan de Oro, later on I will show you, it really has a strategic location. We also looked at its information, communication, and technology, because Cagayan de Oro is one of the new wave cities in terms of ICT of the Philippines. No? We also looked at livability, housing and settlements, water supply and sanitation, power, education and healthcare, public safety. We also looked at protection systems, the environment, disaster risk management, flood management, and solid waste management, as well as institutions and governance. Okay, yeah. And then we put this together and summarized what are the different current and emerging issues. No? We actually looked at the present situation, that would be our base case, parang zero case, and then in the future, what is when we have our craft our vision, we also project into the future what is the ideal situation, and then using the SWOT and TOES, we analyze all the future needs as well, no? And we did several population and economic projections, no? And then we determined how to get there. And then we also looked at the implications of these different findings, no, of the Metro CDO Master Plan. What are its implications in terms of, let's say, the environment, flood control? So we looked at those different lenses. Okay, so when we did the visioning, I just like to deep dive down to the visioning. We asked the mayors to come up with draft vision statements. No, so they came up with these different vision statements. It's very difficult to have mayors, no, to be drafting these, no. So we had to guide them as we went along. So they crafted these 4 major statements, no? And then later on, so a metropolitan region with balanced resource utilization, okay? And then if you see here, I colored them to see what were the common elements in that, these various vision statements. So the green, it's all about integrated development, about balanced resource utilization. The violet, it's about the economy. And the economy of Metro Cagayan de Oro is really about industrialization. They have the biggest industrial hub in the whole Philippines, actually. You know? And we also see that they talk about the vibrant and resilient economy and how it's a gateway and transshipment hub, as well as a center of education, trade, innovation, right? And the yellow, here we see livability, you know, the needs of the growing population, high quality of life, safe and livable communities. And then the aqua, it's about the environment naman and how sustainability works. No? So we put all of these together, right? These are more of it, the vision elements, and came up with a vision statement. Okay, so this is the vision statement. The premier agri-industrial, trading, service, and knowledge-based center of the Philippines, with sustainable ridge-to-reef connectivity for safe, secure, and livable communities. So this was actually one day. You know, we did that in a day's time. Right. So one of the next things we did to be able to do a study was to look at the existing plans, no? And what those different existing plans said about the area. So we looked at the Region 10 framework plan, and this is what they said about the area. They had actually already come up with these different clusters, no? So as you see, this is the Northern Mindanao Strategic Development Areas. They came up with several clusters, no? Like SDA 1, okay? SDA 1 is actually the Cagayan de Oro City, no? And Iligan City, the Cagayan-Iligan Industrial Trade Corridor. They also identified SDA 2, an agri-fishery and aquacultural tourism hub, but this is outside of Metro CDO. No? This is Oroquieta City and Osamis City. They also have SDA 3, which agribusiness ventures in the more agricultural areas of the region. And this is Malaybalay City, more of Bukidnon. And then fourth, you have the Tourism Adventure Loop. If you've been to this area, this is where you have Camiguin, no? The jump off point to Camiguin here. So if you see, we looked at that and we focused more on SDA 1 because this is where the Metro CDO actually lies. And we see here that the plan really has always been the relationship of Cagayan de Oro and Iligan City, and to have this industrial and trade corridor between them. Okay. We also looked at the Misamis Oriental Provincial Physical Framework Plans, right? And the provincial plan actually also identifies several clusters, no? The Manluna cluster, the Aguila subcluster, Galileo cluster, Cagayan de Oro City, Cagayan de Oro City can stand alone talaga eh. So it's really alone. The Clahavita cluster and the Misoret cluster, sorry. Yeah. So Cagayan de Oro City, it's by itself because it's really the educational center, financial center, what else? Trading center. Most of the residences are there, the commercial centers are there, even the national government agencies are all there, no? And it's really also the seat of government of the province, right? The Aguila cluster, subcluster under the Galileo cluster is also significant. It actually includes several municipalities and cities, or I mean El Salvador City, and includes the gateway into Metro CDO, no, the Laguindingan Airport. Yeah, so that's why it's also important. We also have the Clahavita cluster. This is where you have Tagoloan, Villanueva, and Hasaan. These are also important. These are actually industrial towns where what I mentioned earlier, that's where you have the biggest industrial park in the whole Philippines. No? Um, that's why it's really important. And at the same time, they included some Bukidnon towns, no? Because there's this synergy between the uplands and the lowland industrial towns. Okay, so we put all of those together, and then we also did our situational analysis. Okay, when we do situational analysis, this is really the meat of the research. No, we had to really go to each and every town, the 13 towns, speak to them, and as well as gather a lot of data. And of course, in the Philippines, data is really difficult to come by. So that was really the our challenge. No? So we were able to come up. So I just wanted to show you this. No, this is a land classification map of I'll be focusing more on land use, no, which is my sector, and because of our time constraints also. So we looked at the land classification. The pink shows you that it's more really, these are the alienable and disposable lands. This is also a slope map. When we talk of slopes, diba, if in your planning classes, the acceptable slopes in development is 0 to 18%, no? And the more difficult slopes to develop are 18 and above. So Cagayan de Oro, actually, there's, if you look at this, the bay, that's Majacalar Bay, and the lowland is only along the coastal areas. From there, it becomes mountainous na. So that's why, and you see the orange, that means that these are really a lot of slopes, no? Yeah. So this, and I mentioned earlier, they're very rich also in culture, no? So we have mga ancestral domains, the green portions. We still have some indigenous peoples also. So very, for me, I really like the project, no? Very rich and then very diverse talaga. All right. And here's some ground resources map, no? Showing where the water resources are. Okay, this is the watershed map, and each color represents a watershed. So you will see, and what is a watershed? It's that network of rivers and creeks, no? So one watershed represents one. So there is the main river with its branches, no? So you will see, they have so many watersheds in Cagayan de Oro alone, in Metro Cagayan de Oro alone, no? And that is one of the, in planning, we really have to look at that and respect these watersheds because it's really very critical, no, to the way we plan. Okay, we also looked at their mineral resources, and if you look at this, if you look at this square, that's where Metro CDO is, and you see those green dots, no, with different colors, very rich then in mineral resources. In fact, mining, illegal mining, is also one of their major issues. And this is very interesting. This is a flood hazard map in the next 100 years. And the red color represents high susceptibility to hazards, to flood hazards. No? If you're familiar, if you've been following the news in the past decade, they have been really affected. There was this storm. I don't remember their name at the moment. And it was, I think, one of the first times that they really experienced the flooding that we have here regularly in Metro Manila. So it was really a big thing because the waters, no, if you see this red, no, and those actually represent those watersheds and the rivers, the main rivers. So the rivers really swelled, and the waters from the uplands had really gone rushing down, no. And it was also because of a lot of the mountains are no longer, or have been denuded, no. So after that, they really embarked on a lot of reforestation projects and then flood control projects as well. here. And here's another showing the 100-year rain return scenario. No? So, grabe yung red, di ba? So, parang it shows you this actually, that red portion near the water, the coast, that's really the city itself. No? And you'll see that there are these fragments of red. Yan yung the old poblacion or the urban core. No? So, that's really the flooded area. No? And of course, the river. Okay. So we also, in planning, we also look at population and we study the population growth. And in this way, in this study, we also compared it to the population growth of Metro Cebu, Metro Manila, and Metro Davao. Um, you see, in the Philippines, we don't really have a lot of, and even around the world, we don't really have a lot of literature in metropolitan areas because the unit of planning is usually a city, a municipal area, or a town. So to be able to for our economists to determine the growth rate that was going to be used, we did comparisons na lang, and then we decided which one were we going to use, and then we had NEDA approve that. Okay, so we compared the Metro CDO to Metro Cebu, Metro Davao, and you see the growth is of Metro CDO. Um, in 1960 to 1970, Metro Cebu was really tops. But as you can see, as we go along the years, no, there are years wherein Metro CDO's growth is also high. So you see 1970 to 1980, 1970s, no, mataas yung growth rate niya. And also in the previous decades, no, 2000 to 2010, mataas yung growth niya. And that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of potential for a metropolitan region also. Okay, we look at population. And this is what you call a centrographic study, no? And you see those different circles. It's a way of analyzing where is the direction of population growth, no, in Metro CDO. And if you'll see at those different circles, no, see, I can't see also. So from 2000 to 2007 and then 2015, okay. So actually the population is dispersing na, no? Whereas before, population was really more centered on Cagayan de Oro City. Now, slowly, it's dispersing na, going to the other towns. No? Perhaps because medyo built up ng Cagayan de Oro, or it's too busy na for some people, and perhaps the land is already expensive, no? Or it's already built up. So we see here that it's all moving southwest na. Okay. There. So here's another showing different tourism destinations. Very rich. The thing about tourism in Cagayan de Oro, if you've been there, there's a lot of potential, but they haven't really gotten their act together. Okay, one is the transport. It's geared more for adventure tourism and just for businessmen. But really, in tourism, you have to look at the tourism market. And if you really want to earn money in tourism, you have to look at the markets who have money. And one of the markets that is actually unable to really go to Cagayan de Oro because it's geared towards a younger and more adventure market who doesn't exactly have money. they should actually, the market that has more money are the senior citizens, no? With more accomplished, and they have a lot of savings. And because everything is adventure, everything is parang self-catering, it's very difficult to have these older generations, no? And at the same time, the scenery is beautiful. There's so much potential. They have these beautiful rivers, the bay, a lot of beautiful mountains, scenery, agriculture, but they're not really able to capitalize on this. No? When we think of Cagayan de Oro, we only think of whitewater rafting. That's it. We don't think of other things. But did you know that MacArthur, when if you know our Philippine history, when MacArthur left the Philippines, when World War II had started, he went to Cagayan de Oro, and then he flew from Manolo Fortich, okay, to Australia. And these are the historical things that we don't know about. And if you were a history buff, that could be part of tourism. All right. We also looked at ICT, and in the absence of data, we're very high security in terms of data. Our ICT consultant had to just get the crowdsourced data, to look at the networks, telco networks. And you will see here from this map, the telco networks are just in Cagayan de Oro City. And it's really, it's ironic also because Cagayan de Oro City is supposed to be a new next wave city, no? And when you're a next wave city, It's not just about have being technologically savvy in terms of education and creativity, but I think the basic infrastructure is just internet, right? And when we were actually doing the work here, it was really difficult because if you we would use the data on our phones, and when you would go away na from Cagayan de Oro City, wala nang signal. And even in Cagayan de Oro City, sometimes it's only 3G. No, there's really no LTE. Yeah. So we see here the issues, no, and how there is a mismatch from being a next wave city, but we don't really have internet. Okay. Yeah. We also looked at informal settlers. Big cities and metropolitan regions. I mean, big cities which really attract a lot of people, and this also results in, we see this in Metro Manila, di ba? We compared to the rest of the Philippines, we really have a lot of informal settlers, and that's really because cities are really magnets, because these are the lands of opportunity and in terms of employment and jobs. And it's because the employment, the salaries are really much higher in the cities. No? And that's why even Cagayan de Oro City, we see a lot of informal settlers also. Okay, and this is an access to water map. Okay. And here's the existing land use. No, I aggregated the existing land use from the various comprehensive land use plans of the different the 13 towns. No, and you will see here that the majority really, if you see, notice here, um, almost 40% of the whole region is forest land. Okay, and 40% is agricultural. No? So that's really the characteristic of Cagayan de Oro, and that's really its charm as well of Metro Cagayan de Oro. It's not like Metro Manila; it's all built up, all concrete. It's all green, and that's what makes it so beautiful and makes it so special. If you look here, the built up area is really just a small portion. Okay, there. So I also looked at the we also look at the licenses to sell. You can research this also in the internet in the assignment that architect Kelvin has given you as well. We check the different the subdivision licenses to sell from before it was still HLURB, now it's DSHUD, because this also shows you the expansion of development, no, the residential expansion. And we looked from 1995 to 2015. No, that's the available data from the DSHUD, and you will see that the residential development expansion really is still in Cagayan de Oro City. And the next would be Opol. Opol, if you look at the map, that's the next town to Cagayan de Oro City Southwest. And that really confirms that image I showed you earlier, the centrographic projection. Right. So this is another way of looking at where is urban growth, or the direction of residential growth. Okay. So here's the existing land use map of Cagayan de Oro City. Yeah, so it's mostly green, mostly forested. Okay, the colors are different because our GIS consultant used the DNR colors, no, and the colors are different from what we usually use from DSHUD, no. There. And we just really have a very small area that is built up. The built up area is this coral color, and it can mostly be found along the coast, no. And this big coral block, that's Cagayan de Oro City. The rest, you see, that's the protected area I was talking about, and the agricultural areas. All right. So here's more of the agricultural areas again, broken down into crops. Okay. And we also have this strategic agricultural and fisheries development zones map. You can get this also from DNR. And this actually means these are the established areas that you cannot convert into redevelop into land. No? These are priority agricultural lands. When you talk of agriculture, it's not just farms; it's also fisheries. No? Yeah. So these are when it's a SAF-DZ, it means you cannot touch that. You have to respect those. No? Okay. So we have a lot also in Cagayan de Oro. So we also did the location of educational institutions. You can get this from DepEd actually. So we have a lot of schools also. Of course, in each LGU, you will always have the public elementary school and the public high school. However, for universities and colleges, they're mostly located in Cagayan de Oro. You have Xavier Ateneo University, you know, and then you have the other government universities also distributed also in the bigger towns. All right. And also here are some land use maps showing the industrial areas, no? And the industrial areas I was talking about. And we also tried to map out the open spaces and recreational areas, but the area is so huge, no, that you can't really see it. And the if you really look at it in the map, these are actually the areas in Cagayan de Oro City, or the parks and playgrounds of the different subdivisions, or each town actually has its plaza, town plaza. Okay, and of course we did this existing spatial structure of Metro CDO, which is inspired by the reticular matrix. No? Okay, so let me go there. So I'll go to the strategic framework and reticular metro matrix. So I think one of your assignments was actually to watch that video, no? So I'll just go through it quickly. So you know this, no? There are different scales, no, to planning. So architecture is a large scale, and as you go into a bigger scale, the scale increases, no? So when you go to urban design, ito yung mga neighborhoods, communities, it's like 1:500. Urban planning would be a city or town, but regional and metropolitan planning would be around 1:50,000. The thing is, in the Philippines, we have regional planning. NEDA does regional plans every so often, no? For each of our, how many regions we have? 17 or 18. But we don't really have metropolitan planning. And that's a shame because we have several metropolitan regions. We have Metro Manila, Metro Davao, Metro Cebu, and of course all of these other emerging metro regions. And I guess that's one of the reasons why architect Kelvin and architect Mark are really advocating metropolitan planning, because it's really the wave of the future. Okay, yeah. So I think you know this, no? Traditional planning also is really very radial and orbital, because it really looks pretty in our drawings, no? You have a core and then it's circular, no? But we have found that if you watch the video, it really doesn't work. It causes so much inequality. Only the central core is the queen city, and then all those in the periphery, they just have to support that queen city. However, with the reticular matrix, it really encourages a grid. And the good thing about the grid, each grid here it could represent your road network, or it could represent a city or a town. It gives a chance for each city or town to really reinvent itself, to really, if they want to be more aggressive in development, and they can be, and really have a special role in the whole metropolitan region. Okay, so here I won't go through this now. Okay, well, I'll go through it. Okay, so when we talk of radial orbital, there's a competition between the different towns to be the center. No, in Metro CDO, it's everybody wants to be Cagayan de Oro if we still go with the radial orbital matrix. But if we go with the reticular matrix, we are dispersing these urban cores, and everybody gets a chance, no, to really become a city or a town, no? And everybody plays a role in the scheme of things. And then the thing, when you have radial orbital, the way Metro Manila is, one of the reasons why we are so traffic is because our road design is radial and circumferential, and it has been found all over the world that that's no longer the best way of designing roads. With the grid layout, it's better. Traffic is more distributed. There are more choices, and it's more homogeneous. Okay, so one thing also with the radial orbital, I'll just skip the others. The most expensive property is the one in the middle. No, in our case, it should be Cagayan de Oro. But if we had different centers, if we give each and every town a chance, no, there will be multiple centralities, no, so that the price of land also increases in the other areas, and it's not just in the town center. Okay, all right. So here I like the comparison with the dartboard and the chessboard. Okay, do you play chess? Are you familiar with chess? So the reticular matrix is more like playing chess rather than playing darts. Okay. Yeah. And of course, in terms of governance, we look at this is also like is sustainability. Putting together social, physical, and economic systems through governance. Okay. So in the metro matrix, if you play chess, each city or municipality must understand its role and play that role to its utmost advantage. No, it's like chess. No, you have the king, the queen, and each and every one of them has its role. No? One cannot usurp the other kasi very important yung role nila. So if a municipality wanted to play a role that did not correspond to its actual potential, there's serious risk. No, so misplaced investment in local infra, and the performance will not be, they will not reach their potential. Okay, so we have the king, which is the primary urban center of the metropolis or the capital city. So the whole system depends on it, and it has to work for the best. No, in Metro Manila, who is the primary urban center? No? In Cagayan de Oro, it's Cagayan de Oro City. Okay, we also have the queen. If you play chess, you know that this is the most important strategic figure, and the economy is really organized it. So in the metro matrix, these are the ports or the international airports, no, which have a link to the global economy. In Metro Cagayan de Oro, in Metro Manila, which cities are these? No, that who are the queens who have ports or international ports or are gateways? No, in Cagayan de Oro, this is the gateway I mentioned earlier, is Laguindingan, di ba? So Laguindingan is a queen. Before that, you know, the airport was located also in Cagayan de Oro City. And Laguindingan was actually a sleepy town until the airport was located there because they were looking at the Iligan and Cagayan de Oro corridor. It's now located right in the middle, equidistant na sila. Before, people from Iligan had to go all the way to Cagayan de Oro to take the plane, no? And how about ports? In Metro Manila, where is the port? No? In Cagayan de Oro City, we also have an international port. No? So that the town Tagoloan has the international ICT, the International Container Port. No? And then we have several ports also, the more local ports as well. So we have a lot of queens actually in Cagayan de Oro, in Metro Cagayan de Oro. And we also have bishops, those that crisscross their interest in an interwoven strategy, and they're specialized productive centers. No? So in Metro Manila, sino yun? Who are those who have productive centers? No? And siguro those are our CBDs. No? In Cagayan de Oro City, these are actually Manolo Fortich. Wait, I forget the town. One town in Bukidnon who is Claveria, and it's really an agricultural town. But if you look at its agricultural production, it's really tops in the region. No? So I think that would be a bishop. Kasi Claveria would be a bishop because of that. Also Manolo Fortich, as well as some of the more lowland towns. And then you also have the Rooks, who play complementary roles. They are urban centers in both economic production, territorial importance. Then we have the Knights, and then the Pawns. When we presented this sa Metro CDO, one of the things I did, I didn't say na lang that all the other lesser towns were pawns kasi medyo, masakit yun siguro sa mga mayor. So I just said they're all knights, the lesser towns. No? Okay, right. And if you look at the Metro Matrix also, you will see it's actually a grid. All right. But if you see these diagonal lines, the second image, this one, this represents actually the rail system. Okay. The grid network represents the road system, and when you put it together, that is how the metropolitan circulation should work. No? And the circles, actually, the intersections represent your transit-oriented developments. Yeah. And that's where you have your highest densities, mixed uses. No? Okay. Right. Now, if you look at each of these TODs, these are actually what you call balanced urban developments. No? Wherein this is actually the structure for a city or a municipality. According to Pedro Ortiz, a city or municipality should actually have these peripheral roads, perimeter roads, which is your interurban road network or railway network. And crossing in the middle would be your commuter train. You see this violet dashed hidden line. Okay, and this is your city center, no, where you have your historic nucleus, and then the urban expansion would be just across beyond that, no. And he actually locates the heavy industry in the perimeter, okay, as well as the peripheral commercial centers and the regional facilities. Okay, so take note, this is not a site plan. This is just a conceptual framework. So when we adapt this to different cities and towns, it will really change based on the topography. Okay, so this is Pedro Ortiz analysis of Manila. I won't go into this now. But this is the how the analysis should be, no? It is called sieve analysis. First, you always look at the green infrastructure. So if you remember the maps I showed you, we looked at the slopes and topographies. We looked at the rivers or the different watersheds. And then we looked at the gray infrastructure, what is the built-up area, and the transport, the dynamic infrastructure. I didn't show you the road maps of Metro CDO, but you saw in the video, the railway network, the proposed railway network. And of course, you put it together to synthesize it. We also look at the housing, productive sector, and social facilities, no, to put it together. All right. So this is Metro Cagayan de Oro. I did some studies and sketches to look at the urban structure, the metro matrix. So let me show you step by step how it's done. So I looked first at the green infrastructure. So I looked at the different protected landscapes. I just did this in PowerPoint. If you want to do really quick and dirty structure plans. No? So this is Mount Kitanlad Mountain Range. If you're a mountaineer, alam mo to. So I looked at the different green stuff, no? So I put these blobs there. And then we looked at the blue stuff, which is the rivers and creeks, no? Of course, you have the Majakahar Bay and then all of these rivers. And then I put in together this grid. This grid network is the size of sorry, I forget now. So I put in this grid network, which would represent the ideal module, no? When you speak to Pedro Ortiz, in one of his writings, because he said that the size of the city,
I think it's the size of the settlements in comparison to the land area.
Yes, yeah. And at the same time, I was really amazed at this because most of these towns here are Spanish towns, and you would see that the size of the city represents the size of the city represents the size. How do I say this? It represents the distance you can walk the whole city to the next town in one day. You know? So that was really amazing to me. Ayun. Pero Pedro said that no, it's not a fixed thing, because really what makes a settlement or a city is the dynamics within that city. It determines really the size of that city. Okay. Right. And then I looked at the different towns, no? And based on their population and economy, you will see the different sizes, the different blobs. No? Ayan. And then I looked at the major road network. Okay. These are the major road networks that this line is the Iligan, Cagayan de Oro to Butuan Highway. And then this one goes to Davao City. Ayan. These are the different towns. No? Okay. So that's one of the studies I did. Okay. Ayan. So I also did this proposed structure. So I did several studies. No? Ayan. And if you look at, if you remember the urban framework, it's the perimeter roads really. You need those perimeter roads around each and every town. And that was what was lacking in Cagayan de Oro. It didn't have this parallel road. So traffic was really horrible along this route. No? The Iligan, Cagayan de Oro, and Butuan Highway. No? The traffic was really horrible. You would have trucks, vehicles, buses, jeeps. No? And what they really needed was this parallel road, a train network, itong red, okay, as well as these, remember the diagram kanina, itong parallel roads, no? Itong roads naman connecting the two highways, okay? So this is just my simple diagram, Yeah. And this is the recommendations in terms of the different chess pieces. Yeah. So I will say it again kanina. So Cagayan de Oro is the king, Laguindingan and Tagolon are the queens, and then you have Opol, Villanueva, and El Salvador are the industrial towns, because a lot of the big industrial companies are all located there, no? And the industrial hub I was saying was FIVIDEC, the Philippine Veteran something, okay, and Villanueva. They're all industrial, no? And then Hasaan and Alubihid are the rooks. No? They're complementary. They play complementary roles to the bigger towns. And then you have the candidate metros, municipality Balingasag as a knight, and the rest are actually pawns. Okay, there. So I also did a study of Cagayan de Oro City in terms of balanced urban development. And if you look at it, it really is comprised by several, it's no longer just one city really, or one, it's really comprised of several neighborhoods na and districts. Okay, so this is very rough study lang. Yeah. Okay, so a lot of notes. All right. So after that, we also did some studies, no, in terms of land use. We did some computations. Um, we looked at the buildable area, and how do we get the buildable area? We get the total area less the area, the hazards, which is earthquake-induced landslides, which is unique to every city and metro region, rain-induced landslides, the 100-year flood. These are the maps I showed you earlier, the 2-meter storm surge, no? And we were able to get the net buildable area. So the net buildable area is only 30% of the total land area of Cagayan de Oro. Okay. And we also looked at the different expansion areas. No? If we, di ba 30% na lang naiwan? But if we subtract the current built-up area, we only have 10% left na lang talaga, 9 to 10%. Okay. So very conservative. That's if you're being very conservative, no? But of course, there are a lot of other ways, no? You could have adaptation. You can allow, let's say, development in these areas, in these hazard-prone areas or sloped areas, but your architecture adapts to it, no? Parang ganon. It's possible naman. Okay. So this is the buildable areas map. The gray is the buildable areas. No? We also put in the fault lines. Those are the red lines. Late in the study, we had to put those in also kasi suddenly Taal volcano erupted also, and there were some earthquakes in Cagayan de Oro. Yeah. So I also computed the areas that are suitable for residential land. So this is called land suitability. How do we do this? We look at the criteria kasi for residential land use. These are the areas within 18%, no? Less than 18% slope, net of the geohazards, net of the buffer fault lines, and the NIPAs. No? These are the protected areas. So of that 30%, we have around 26% buildable. We look again, so this is the residential areas. No? And then we also looked at land suitable for commercial land. When we look at suitability for commercial land, naman, these are the areas we deduct the constraints, which are again the geohazards, and the areas above 8% slope. Okay, so usually commercial areas, these are slopes from 0 to 8%. No, and again we have the NIPAs and buffer lines. No, so it would go to be around 18%. And lastly, so these are the commercial areas. And lastly, we also looked at the industrial uses. So ang difference naman ng industrial use from commercial, ang industrial, it has to be flat, di ba? Kasi the buildings are really vast, big boxes. So again, we computed it using slopes deducting all slopes greater than 3%. Okay, so we see a much smaller area. And these are mostly located in the coastal areas. Let's see, so here's our map. All right, and then after all of this analysis, we projected the population in 2040. Okay, so we projected for each and every town, right? And assumed the growth rate. We used the Metro Cebu trajectory because according to our economists, medyo similar daw ang growth, no? And it was approved naman by NEDA. So, so this is the growth, no? And based on those projections, are the different consultants computed how much water will we need by that time, how much electricity. I computed how much land. The consultants, solid waste, also computed what is the waste generation in the next year until 2040. And then we saw the different issues. So here's there. And then we put that together, this structure plan. Okay. Basically, if you look at this rough illustration, you can see the metro matrix. At the same time, you can see some of remember the slides I showed on the Region 10 structure plan also. So you can see it here as well as the provincial clusters, but we put it together now. So one is we put an aerotropolis cluster where you have the gateway by air to Region 10. And then we also have a heavy industry cluster here in the east. Okay. And this is where you have the gateway by sea to Region 10 naman. No? There's the port area and the international container terminal. And then, of course, you have the Cagayan de Oro cluster, solo pa rin siya, because it's the educational center, financial center, CBD, ICT, logistics, business, MICE tourism, everything. No? And we have another cluster, the agri-industrial tourism cluster. This is the Bukidnon towns of Claveria and Manolo Fortich. This is where you have the Del Monte plantation, a lot of agro-industry. We could have farm plantation tourism, adventure tourism. And let me go through the Aerotropolis cluster. This is where you have the huge Habini Bay Ayala development, almost the whole of Laguindingan. So they have a new town and the El Salvador City, Opol, Initao, Alubihid. They have their own mga ports, a lot of logistics, a lot of locators in terms of light industry. But at the same time, you have also tourism, the most beautiful, you can see the most beautiful mangroves there and beaches, white sand beaches also. You also have pilgrimage tourism. This is where you have in the 3 o'clock habit, they have a pilgrimage center there. And of course, another a proposed government center in Alubihid. So this is how you do a structure plan. You put together all the other proposals, the existing strengths and the future proposals, and put it together, as well as you overlay also the circulation, as well as the different, the greens also, the blue and the greens, as well as the grays. Okay. Yeah. So this one I overlaid it naman on the Google map, Google Earth map. Okay. So we also saw how we could have a water bus. One of the most neglected, how we saw was that there was such a huge potential because there's a lot of they're surrounded by water, Metro CDO, but there are no water buses that could really help alleviate the traffic. Right. There. Okay. So as you can see, we have this parallel highway also and the railway system there. So, okay. So putting all of that together, let me review again what you saw in the video. So we have the vision, right? And at the same time, we looked at, you also have to look at the different, what will be your guiding approaches. So one was really the metropolitan reticular matrix. We looked at that. We also looked at the ridge to reef approach, integrated long perspective. So when we talk of ridge to reef, we look at what are the different ecosystems from the water all to the forests, and see how that relates to our plan and integrate it in our plan. Okay. We're also in this plan, we were guided by Singapore's livable city framework, which is high quality of life, competitive economy, sustainable environment. And then you do integrated master plan, but really what is the key for Singapore is really its dynamic urban governance, right? We also looked at the smart city, the global city, and the circular economy. We also looked at the Netherlands room for the river approach. Flooding is one of the biggest issues kasi now in Metro Cagayan de Oro. And instead of building a lot of concrete infrastructure, which actually accelerates more the velocity of the water, the Netherlands, they got tired na rin of building all of these dikes, which a lot, and pag nag-break down, they'll really be underwater, okay? Because the Netherlands is really underwater. So if you look at this section here above, Okay, right now, if you have the river, okay, but the room for the river approach actually, see, they create a second channel. They really welcome na lang the water, create more space for the water rather than keep on trying to keep the water away. And that's one of our main recommendations also for Metro Cagayan de Oro. Yeah. Also, we looked at sustainable mobility, eco-industry, and open space networks. We were inspired by the Park Connector network of Singapore, as well as in the United States, one of the heritage open space network is the Emerald Necklace in Boston. So you can see this, no? Several parks that are connected. And actually, these parks are also double as flood infrastructure. Right. And also, we were also guided by the Aerotropolis concept, no? Whereas if we look at heritage cities, the center divides the town plaza where you have the church, like what we have. But with the Aerotropolis concept, the the center is really the gateway to the town or city, which could be the airport or the port, which is exactly what Metro Cagayan de Oro is. And then you build build the city around that. That's why you have that Aerotropolis cluster and then the heavy industry cluster, right? And of course, when we do planning, we always try to learn from other cities or regions. No? We studied metropolitan Tokyo, which is the largest. If you look years before, Metro Tokyo was the biggest metro region in the whole world for the longest time. But in recent years, now we have Metro Jakarta, Metropolitan Seoul, and Metro Manila. So we look at the good things and the bad things. We learn from the mistakes actually of Metropolitan Manila, a lot of mistakes, no? And try to avoid that in the future. Yeah. Okay. So this puts together the framework. If you look at the structure plan, this is the graphic illustration of it. The vision, the outcomes, and the different systems. And of course, overarching is the land use and governance. All right. So I'll just go through, you've seen this before, but perhaps now you will see how everything was put together. And number one is the polynuclear structure. When you look at these maps, try to imagine the reticular matrix I had shown you. This is the interpretation now. So if you see now, Cagayan de Oro is not the sole, it's not the core anymore of Metro Cagayan de Oro. It still is, but we are encouraging the other different towns also. They have a role in the overall development. No? So it's polynuclear. We're dispersing everything to the different towns. Oops. Okay. The transport strategy is, remember what I showed you kanina? Diba? We have the Iligan to Cagayan de Oro City to Butuan Road. Okay. So we still have that highway. But you will notice this yellow colored line. This is the parallel highway. So it's going to happen. And these hidden lines, these are remember the lines that would connect the highway to the parallel highway. So we have that also. And we also have you can see the railway network as well. No? Right. Okay. And of course, we have several gateways, no? Airport. Manolo Fortich also has that airport. It's the airport where I know General MacArthur had flown to Australia. And we have a lot of seaports, no? One international and a lot of domestic there. So really, Metro CDO is really well connected. And of course, our cluster strategy. Okay, after you've done all of that, you also have to think of your clusters. The Aerotropolis cluster centered on the airport, CBD centered on Cagayan de Oro, agri-industry centered on the uplands of Manolo Fortich and Claveria, and the heavy industries cluster focused on FIVIDEC and the International Container Port. Okay. Oops. Also, we looked at the different growth areas. So when you do your frame structure plan, you try to think, where are the different growth areas? So for Metro Cagayan de Oro, these are the growth areas. You have FIVIDEC, I mentioned this, downtown CDO, and uptown. If you've been to CDO, downtown growth area is the traditional poblacion where you have all these beautiful heritage buildings. And the uptown growth area is where you see the newer buildings. You have an SM, a lot of call center buildings, a lot of newer residential neighborhoods. No? And of course, you have El Salvador growth area. It's not just this is not where you just have the religious tourism, but also where you have a lot of new developments, new industrial areas. And of course, the proposed USTP Alubihid, and of course Laguindingan Aerotropolis. All right, and you put this all together in one whole structure plan. And as you see these little dots, these are the TODs of the railways. So that's how your structure plan will look like when you put it all together. You have the circulation, you have the growth centers, you have your and you have your different polynuclear cities and towns. Okay, there. Oops. And so again, this is just showing the different projects, the connectivity systems, livability systems, protection systems, and the synthesis of the different projects. Here. Okay. And of course, you may be wondering, how is this all going to happen? Okay. You know, it's very easy to plan and to draw, but actually the heart of metropolitan region really is the governance. No? How are you going to put together these 13 mayors, these 13 towns and cities with their own egos? And how are they going to agree to disagree and to be able to support the metro region, but at the same time, they will be able to be individuals. No? That's really the challenge. Each town and city have to be individuals, but at the same time, they have to band together as a metro region or metro CDO. So we're talking about to be able to be strong. Okay, because there are some functions in a metro region that have to be metropolitan wide. And what are these? The railway system, the road networks, is the main highways. No, that's something that the metro region should take care of. No? Solid waste, no, that cannot be kanya-kanya, and we can see that here in Metro Manila, di ba? It's such a headache for MMDA, the traffic, kasi we have the 17 towns, the cities and municipalities in Metro Manila, di ba? And how do we get them to agree to traffic management and to railway system? Here is the same also. So one of the recommendations really was to have a chief executive officer who is appointed by the president, and then composed of the different national agencies and the Metro CDO provincial LGUs. No? And then you have the support, of course, of NEDA Region 10, and then it has its own offices now. Yeah. No, so basically that's how it's going to work. And of course, the regional government, the role really is to support all of the towns, and they will take care of all the regional projects, no? Whereas each town will still act as an individual LGU, and have their local projects. All right. And of course, very important in every plan is communication. Our plan will be useless. Our Metro CDO plan, which we worked for 2 years, would have been useless if we did not communicate it to the public and to the stakeholders. No? So one of the things we did when we were doing the plan was at every stage, the stakeholders were part of it and collaborated really. No? So, and that's one of the things NEDA will be doing now, communicating this to the mayors and the different stakeholders and seeing how the partnerships can be done. All right. So implementation. One of the issues lang now kasi is we have COVID, no? But if there was no COVID and we had finished the project, they would have mobilized right away some of the 5 projects you had seen in the video. Okay, and so this is for implementation. This is the budget, no? For the infrastructure projects, around 408 billion, and the non-infra, 279 million. And we have really a long list of projects that are different time periods, short term, medium term, and long term. All right. Thank you very much. I hope that was very helpful to all of you, and I'll be very glad to answer your questions or clarifications.
Thank you, Architect Mia. That was really very comprehensive. Actually, I was listing questions, and then every question was already answered on my end, no? Like my question was how important was the green and gray infrastructure in identifying the vision, and then you showed us the different in the metro matrix, no? How you came up with you ended up with the whole structural plan. And I think also it's very interesting to see also the plan on the governance side, kasi most plans sa atin sa Pilipinas, especially yung mga master plans or mga comprehensive land use plans, nagkakaproblema because of the governance and implementation. And I think part of the metropolitan planning also is really looking at it in a different perspective, no? Being able to bring people together, especially the local executives, to work hand in hand. It's very difficult lang nga kasi they'll have to give up some of their probably power, no, dun sa metropolitan manager para mag-work yung
That's why
planning.
I really like the reticular matrix, no? Kasi you can still be the mayor of your town, but at the same time you have that metro region. Because in other in other way, if you had that more concentric way of planning that was not polynuclear, no, you would always have to defer to Cagayan de Oro City. But actually here everybody has a chance. Kung masipag yung mayor, he really has a chance to improve his town. Hindi siya relegated to being just a pawn, but he could really, improve himself. That's what I
Exactly.
like about the Metro Matrix.
Exactly. Siguro I have one question lang. For me, no, what is the biggest factor that you think, no, you project in the success of Metro CDO? Apart from all the things that you've discussed, what do you think is one of the biggest factor that will contribute to really its success?
For me, it's really the politics. Yeah, no.
Mhm.
In planning, really, it's really easy to make a plan, especially when it's all bound. It's all based naman on theory and concept, diba? It's really very easy. But what will really make it work is really the politics. And if you're able to get the support early on of all the stakeholders and of the mayors, no? And if they see their role in the bigger picture, no? Because if you fail to do that from the start, um, even the stakeholders, they won't support the project, and really our role as planners, we're really there really to facilitate planning. We're not there to play God or say, no, this is what you do. No, we're just there to really guide the development, because ultimately it's really our stakeholders who are really doing the planning, as well as our the local governments.
Tama. And I think exactly from what you said, no, maganda yung how to present the Metro Matrix to the local executives kasi they will really see the huge picture, and maganda yung connectivity, and they will really find value yung
Yes.
kung ano yung role nila in that whole development.
Yeah.
Sige, Professor Barya, go ahead,
Yeah.
you can ask a question.
Hi. Hi, Architect Mia Kim po.
Hello.
So you talked about, and Prof. K also talked about governance and the difficulty for us to even have our local plans, our traditional plans carried out. Okay, so how does the metropolitan planning figure in the current setup that we have? Diba? We have our CLUPs, we have our regional development plans, and I'm sure that if you come up with, for example, your CDO governance structure, this will entail legislation,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So I don't know if you already went to that phase. How long will this governance last? Will it be beyond the term of the mayors? So how does that go about?
Yeah, so I think for Metro CDO, actually, if you saw yung timeline ko, talagang they had started way back in the 1990s. So when they finally had NED had the budget to have the master plan done, actually in parallel, they already started drafting the legislation for Congress, no? And there were actually congressmen who were really taking the cudgels na for it, no? So they were just really waiting for the master plan. So I think right now, it's already in Congress, no? They're actually they filed the bill, and hopefully it will be approved, no? But at the same time, you also asked the question in our planning, in our planning, where is
Practice.
metropolitan planning?
Yeah.
Actually, we don't have it. We don't have the guidance on planning. So I think that's one of the things that the planners will have to advocate. They should, no? We have to have our metropolitan planning. Kasi if you look at the scales of planning kanina, di ba? We only have regional planning, and then we go to city planning na kaagad. Wala tayo yung in between na we have provincial planning, yes, but that's still not metro planning. Our provincial is more provincial. Sorry.
Yeah.
If you look at the fund, no, we really have to have that metropolitan level, and I think that's one of the things we need. Maybe PIEP can advocate, or even the metropolitan org can advocate to the should, because we even when we were talking to NEDA, kasi no, when I was presenting nga, parang conscious ako kasi NEDA doesn't like it when you use the word regional. Sometimes, kasi di ba, metro region, we sometimes we say metro region kasi nga it's composed of cities. Pero si NEDA, they're very conscious of that term. Kasi pag regional, yun yung region term. Oo. So, very hard. Grabe sila mag-correct ng wording na yun. No? So, but when you go to other countries, metro is a region also. So, nandun yung confusion dahil sa mga terminologies. So, that's where we're at now. We really have to advocate metropolitanization as part also of planning, because we only have four now, Metro Manila, Metro Cebu, Metro Davao, and then perhaps Metro CDO and the other 10 metro regions. But at the same time, they're just, of course, it's legislation. At the same time, talagang political siya kasi higher level na, no? And we really need the guidance na, no? Put it together in guidelines, then best practices, and of course the worst practices of Metro Manila. We should invite Sir Dinky so he can talk about the worst practices in Metro Manila and what not to do. But there's so much potential for metropolitan planning in the Philippines.
Yeah, and I think also you mentioned it in the start of your talk, how important is connectivity and yung ICT, no? Yeah. I think that one characterizes the metropolitan development because it's the future. We're not connected anymore by the same infrastructure that we have, like roads or whatever. But we have fast internet, we have fast connectivity, especially now that we are in this pandemic. No, you can see we can really communicate faster. So I think to be able to put those infrastructural systems ahead, no? Kailangan talaga natin ng metropolitan thinking.
Yes.
So, yan. Any other questions sa mga students? Meron bang mga interested or baka nakatulog na sila?
Yeah, I really deliberately did the step-by-step for the...
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, you saved us one whole lecture.
I think that's what they wanted to see.
Anyway, any other questions, Professor Maria?
I have other questions. Well, I would wish that my students would ask questions, pero feeling ko yung mga questions ko very self-serving. Maybe for two more questions. How can, let's say, the different LGUs or different mayors start this consciousness? How can they make them more aware? And do they go to PIEP and tell them and knock on your doors? We need your help. We want to really band together. That's my first question. And my second question, is there hope for Metro Manila?
Yeah. Well, first for the LGUs, my answer is it's with difficulty, because when we talk to the three mayors of Metro CDO, their mayors are really mayors, and they really just think about their different towns and cities. But you would really need but there's one very visionary mayor in Cagayan de Oro, and it's the mayor of Cagayan de Oro City. It's really ang galing niya, because he's really thinking beyond Cagayan de Oro City. And I guess it takes a lot of exposure. Maybe the mayors need to be more exposed in other countries perhaps, and in other best practices, and see the potentials of being in a metro region. But really the initiative here will come from NEDA and the provincial governments, but really from our experience, we saw a lot of wala naman from government here,
Wala.
There was a lot of when we first started meeting with, for example, Bukidnon, they were really hesitant to speak to us because ang akala nila when you have a Metro CDO, yung mga towns sa Bukidnon will be ceded to Misamis Oriental. And they said, no. Hindi kayo mapupunta sa Misamis Oriental. You'll still be Bukidnon. Ibang layer ang Metro region. Kasi in the beginning, they didn't want to join. Parang ganon. Kasi sabi nila, they just want us because nasa amin ang watershed, nasa amin ang water supply, nasa amin ang electricity. Kasi ang Mindanao is when we look at sustainability, sila yung hindi generator ang kanilang electricity. Hydroelectric power ang majority, no? So that was that was how they looked at it. Parang love their own pa rin. So we really have to have this advocacy on metropolitanization that, it's not about akin to, ganon, but we have to share our resources to become more powerful or better or stronger or more climate risk hazard resilient, no? I guess that's really how they should look at it and to really improve their economies, no? There's so much potential in Cagayan de Oro compared to Metro Manila, because they really still have the natural resources. They have, it's all raw and virgin pa, and that's why they really have all this potential, no? And the difference really is there's really a very strong regional, very strong pa ang kanilang regional feelings, no?
Yeah.
And union difference. So when you talk of Metro CDO, gustong-gusto nila yan pa rin, no? They will support it kasi it's really for the love of the region. And if you ask Metro Manila, for me, I guess as planners, we always, for me, I'm always positive. I always look at the future. And for me, there's always hope naman talaga eh. And we just really have to get our act together. And I guess we have seen, even in the pandemic, we have to look at the small wins if you cannot see the big wins, no? There are a lot of small wins, and I guess when you have a lot of small wins, they translate to big wins. So for me, there's still hope. And we see like what was done with yung carousel, the bus carousel ng EDSA. I thought that was really good, except that medyo nga difficult siya for the senior citizens. But finally organizing our transport, that's a good thing, di ba? And then having our bike networks, and it had to take a pandemic to do all of these things, no? So there, we have a lot of small wins and change in consciousness. And I guess we have a lot of younger mayors already na medyo mas maganda na rin yung outlook. So I guess there's still hope for Metro Manila. Yeah, for the students. For me, I really like Metro Manila. You see, when you study it, there's a lot of heritage. There's still some green. There's a lot of blue. Although our rivers and creeks are medyo polluted, but there's always hope, you see, if we put our minds to it. And we have the advantage really of we have the density, population density. It could be a boon or a bane, as we've seen with COVID, no? Mas siya. And we talk of also the informal settler network communities also, no? Mas marami talaga in the cities. But I'm optimistic pa rin for Metro Manila. It will always be for me, it will really be the capital of the Philippines. The main metropolitan region. But of course, if the other regions are able to get their acts together, they could actually be much better than Metro Manila. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Artie, Mia. So I think that would be all, no? Maybe I can ask Sir Mertz Certificate to give us a parting message before we close the night. Andyan ba siya? Ayan si Sir Mertz.
Yes. Thank you, Architect Mia Kimpo, for giving this opportunity doon sa ating launching ng Metro X Junior. So we're looking forward to have more of this series with other universities. It's a good thing that Architect De Chavez is hosted this launching event, no? And I look forward probably later on a more discourse with the students, but I know for sure all of those questions are already been answered, because the presentation of Architect Mia is really for me, it's it's already there. You don't need to ask question because most of the questions are already answered by her presentation. So with that, I thanks everybody for staying this late. Actually, for student, maybe it's not late, no? But yeah, I look forward for, of course, the purpose of this Metro X Junior is for new generations to be familiarize and hopefully advocate metropolitan discipline in their work, no? And maybe later on study further on the metropolitan discipline as an alternative in planning, no? Especially in urban areas. So with that, thank you everyone for attending, and good luck for, especially for those students aspiring to be architect and ENPs in the future. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I close, I'd like to promote yung aming Facebook page, the International Metropolitan Fellows. Actually, I'll announce in class, no, how you can be also fellows in the future. So with that, thank you very much, Mia. Thank you for this time. Thank you, Mark and Mertz. It's really very comprehensive, no? Thank you, Professor Barya, and thank you to all the students who attended. Good night. See you next week sa class. Bye.
Thank you.
Keep safe. Keep safe. Thank you.
Bye-bye.